Hey there, I'm David, and here to talk about Dave's Picks Volume 9. I was going to say 10. 10, we got a good one coming up for 10. We just locked that one in, but more on that probably in a few weeks or something like that. Dave's Picks Volume 9. If you're not aware, which you probably are, we announced it a few months ago when we put the subscriptions for 2014 on sale. So we have announced it. You're, I'm sure, aware that it's May 14th, 1974 in Missoula, Montana. Classic Grateful Dead show. You know, interestingly, to me at least, this one was given a lot of consideration to be Dave's Picks Volume 1. It was up against a couple other shows. Richmond, Virginia, 1977, of course, became Volume 1, and Hartford 74, July 31st, 74, which of course became Volume 2. So this was kind of put on the back burner, and now that it was time to kind of come up with something 1974-esque again, certainly top of the heap. Great show, and very unique show, which we always like. Great shows, always kind of the big criteria, but also just as important is cool stuff. Great performance, I don't know, just as important, but very important. It's neat. We like cool things. So a little context, Grateful Dead 1974, of course, Wall of Sound era. The Wall of Sound had been debuted 2 shows before this on March 23rd, 1974 at the Cow Palace, just near San Francisco. And you might know that from Dick's Picks Volume 24, and that was, again, March 23rd. They took about 6 weeks off, probably to tweak this Wall of Sound. Also, they wanted to finish Mars Hotel, which they recorded through March and April of 74. And then May 12th, they began the first tour with the Wall of Sound in Reno, Nevada. Good show, outdoors. I heard there were a lot of problems with the sound, partly because the Wall of Sound was so brand new, but also it was a very windy day, and sound, if you've seen a show that is windy, it can really mess with the sound. I saw a show once at the Gorge in Washington State, and I was back a little bit, and it was very windy, and it really messed with the sound. Certainly wasn't all that good. But nonetheless, they play an outdoor show in Reno on May 12th. May 14th, the first outdoor show of the tour in Missoula, Montana, the only Grateful Dead show ever in the state of Montana, which is kind of cool. I think, sorry, it's a little cold out today. I think the Dead played most states. There's probably a few, I know there are a few they didn't play, and Montana was almost one of those, but they did end up playing the one show in 1974. So here they are on the road with the huge Wall of Sound indoor arena. I think it's about 10,000 seat basketball arena at the University of Montana. The Dead drew a little over 7,000, which is cool. Good crowd for the Dead, I think, in 1974. And it's part of what they were doing. I hope no rogue. If you see a rogue wave coming, let me know, please, so nothing comes and sweeps me out to sea. And so they were doing short tours in 1974. The Wall of Sound was a lot to lug around, so they did the short tour of Reno, Missoula, and then Vancouver, BC, Portland, Seattle, and then a week later they played, or a couple days later, they played in Santa Barbara on May 25th, and that ended it. So that little half dozen shows ended the first little run, and then they started again on June 16th, ran for another 2 weeks, and then they did some more shows starting in the later part of July. Very short runs, and then of course they ended 74 with the European tour in September, and then the 5 shows at Winterland in October. So the Wall of Sound was really only around for about 40 shows. Anyhow, we'll get into some music, and I also want to say the recording is magnificent. Kid Candelario, kudos to Kid, his recordings are some of my favorites. A nice dry sound, which is to say you can really hear all of the instruments. I think all of the Dead's recordists had their own unique way to mix the Dead or record them. And Kid's recordings, there's a clarity to all of the instruments that I just think is really wonderful. Oh, you hear those? Those are oyster catchers. We've talked about those on these videos before. Oh, they're coming closer. If you see oyster catchers attacking, let me know. And so the Dead start out in Missoula with kind of a classic show opener of the time, Bertha. And the first minute or so of the song takes a little while for the mix to settle in, but by the middle part of the song really settles in nicely, and you've got from then on a great mix on this show. Vocals are great, nice and crisp. Drums, very, very good. Keith and Bob, you're doing some great stuff on the 2 channels on the left and right for rhythm guitar and piano, and Jerry and Phil. Phil's playing, you get a nice big meaty bottom end, but you also get, you hear every note that Phil's doing in the vocals. So I'm going to run through a little bit of the first set again. We've had 3 or 4 months where you've probably thought about this show. I know I have, but since we announced it, so I won't get into a play-by-play of the first set, but I will talk about some of the highlights, and then we'll get into some of the second set. So the first set highlights, again, as I said, we always like to do, you know, the first criteria of these things is a great show, and then we also want a few tentpole moments, a few things that are really the highlights, like above and beyond the rest of the great show, big moments, things that you could really kind of hang your hat on as great moments in dead history, not just for this show, and this show has plenty of them. So after Bertha, we get kind of a bit of a standard first set material from The Time of My Uncle and Loser, and then we get the first, I think the first real highlight of the show is Scarlet Begonias, early in the first set. Now Scarlet Begonias, this is only the second ever version of Scarlet Begonias, had been debuted at Cow Palace with the Wall of Sound debut on March 23rd. And what I find so great about this, the song itself is terrific. They really nail it all. But the jam afterwards, the jam that 3 years later would end up sagging into Fire on the Mountain, here doesn't really have anywhere to go in terms of going into another song, so they just jam it, and they really jam it nicely, and it's really, they lock into a nice groove, and then they end it with the nice Scarlet Begonias closing riff. And then it goes into It Must Have Been the Roses. Great version of Must Have Been the Roses. Must Have Been the Roses is one of those songs, I love it, but if it wasn't played really well, it could really drag a bit, particularly later 70s through the 80s. But in '74, it was more of a mid-tempo kind of thing, that it was almost peppy. I'm not talking kind of a rock and roll peppy song, but it certainly had a lot more energy than it would later. A lot quicker tempo, and this is a great version of Must Have Been the Roses, one of my favorite versions I've ever heard. So you get this great combination of two brand new Garcia sung songs, Scarlet Begonias and It Must Have Been the Roses, both of which played incredibly well. I also want to give an honorable mention to Black Throated Wind, always one of my favorite songs, but Keith in particular is doing some wonderful stuff on the electric keyboard. He's playing a lot of grand piano at this show, but on the electric keyboard he's doing some great stuff. So Black Throated Wind, another big highlight in the first set. First set again continues with some of the more standard stuff from the time. Deal, great version of Deal, Brown Eyed Women, Big River, things like that. And then the first set ends with kind of what you'd expect from 1974, a big version of Playing in the Band, over 20 minutes long. And Playing in the Band, if you're thinking of 1972, 73, they would perform the 3-minute intro of the song, and oh, there's gonna be a big boat going by in a minute, I think. God, I do have the attention span of a gnat, as somebody once said. But it's not my fault. Look around. A lot of stuff going on. And so, the Playing in the Band starts out, again, we're talking 1972, 73. The jam kind of stayed in one place, which is a great place. Don't get me wrong, I could listen to Playing in the Band all day, every day from that era. And then it would come back to the reprise 15, 20 minutes later. This version in 1974, it's a lot more dynamic than they were in 72, 73, which is to say, it goes into some very mellow, jazzy places. Really, check out what Billy and Keith are doing, and Jerry and Bob and Phil, of course. But I do want to say Jerry also goes crazy on the Tiger. He really has a exploding feedback Tiger thing happening that is just a really, really wonderful version of Playing in the Band. One of my favorites, mainly because of all of the cool places it goes. It really hits everything you'd want from Playing in the Band, and very few Playing in the Bands do this. They hit so many, this one hits so many different places. So a top shelf Playing in the Band, really one that I have been listening to for 25 years. I've had this tape in one form or another from my tape trading days, and then in the vault. Kind of always slated for release, it just never happened, so we're very happy that Missoula is finally coming out. Playing in the Band, they're so into it, when they come back to the reprise, they kind of drop an egg kind of thing. It's kind of funny. Oh, oyster catcher. They kind of mess it up, and then they fix it immediately. Typical Grateful Dead on a good night. If they do make mistakes, they fix them, and they fix them extremely well. So that's what you get here. You get this great version of Playing in the Band, great reprise, where they kind of have to run through it twice. Great stuff. That ends the first. Excellent first set. Really one of my favorites from the era. High energy and great set list. So second set. Second set begins with U.S. Blues, another new song. Now, Wave That Flag had been played through 73, and then it came back in early 74 as U.S. Blues. Very different song, of course. The one that would, of course, appear on Mars Hotel. Opens up with a high-energy rockin' version of U.S. Blues. excellent El Paso, and then Road Jimmy, another song that is just, when it's played well, one of my favorite songs. Just beautiful, and this one is played extremely well. Again, going back to Kids Mix, where a song like this, where everybody's doing something so intricate, you really can hear what everybody's doing on this Road Jimmy. And so then we're 3 songs into the second set, and then the big fireworks begin. Weather Report Suite, which I think we're going to put up as a listening thing over at dead.net. So do go to dead.net, you'll hear the Weather Report Suite. Really, really top-end Weather Report Suite. Everything is played beautifully. Jerry has a couple of great leads. Bobby, Donna singing extremely well, and everything about this Weather Report Suite is great. And it kind of starts at the end, kind of fades out to like a couple seconds of this spacey thing, and you don't know where it's going to go. And that's a nice thing about Weather Report Suite in a second set. Oftentimes it would be a first set closer. In a second set, you didn't know where it would go. It might just end. Sometimes it would go into something. This goes into, as a friend of mine says, the wildest, weirdest, deepest, darkest dark star of 1974. Now, 1974 didn't see a lot of dark stars. I think about a half a dozen in all of 1974. They weren't playing it the way they were in 72 and 73, where they played it virtually every second or third night in those years. In 74, they only played it, like I say, 6 or 7 times out of 40 shows, 40-some shows. And, quiet, you. Oh, there's the boat. And this Dark Star, kind of like the Playing in the Band, where it hits so many different things. It's got this incredible jazz vibe to it the whole time, but it gets into some of the deepest feedback, loudness, craziness, psychedelic, like really mind-blowingly good stuff. And I can't imagine, I've seen pictures of the interior. You look them up online of the Adams Fieldhouse, University of Montana. Take a look before you listen to the show so you can get a vibe of it. Now picture that with 7,000 people, the wall of sound, and then what they end up doing during this Dark Star. Spectacular stuff. I'm sure everybody walked out of there with their minds completely blown, and kind of, it's when the Dead come to town, you're in Montana, and they make you a fan for life because they've just absolutely blown you away with, unlike anything else any band has ever done for you before. That's what I love about the Dead. They're not the best at what they do. And then the Dark Star goes into some crazy space, the Tiger, some feedback, some jazzy stuff, some really introspective, a little bit reminiscent of the Dark Star on Dick's Picks Volume 28 from February of '73, a whole year and some before that. Oh, there he goes. And so you've got a kind of a real jazzy version of Dark Star. It's really one of my favorites. Great stuff. Falls beautifully into China Doll. Again, a note-perfect China Doll, which again, it's one of those songs kind of like Must Have Been the Roses, that if it's not played really well, it can just drag a little bit. This one is played extremely well. Then you get Promised Land, then you get a couple real rocking tunes to end the second set. Not Fade Away, ripping version of Not Fade Away, and then Going Down the Road Feeling Bad. And the Going Down the Road Feeling Bad, long, really rocking, and then instead of going back to Not Fade Away or One More Saturday Night, as it often would, it ends the show. Really, really great stuff. Now, apparently, this weekend in May, when the Dead played in Montana, was some homecoming thing or some college party on campus, where everybody had these huge mugs of beer, pitchers almost, I guess. They were huge. And I guess apparently somebody, I've read a few reviews of the show, somebody threw their pitcher up on stage and cracked Bob Weir in the head, and Bobby gives a very sarcastic thanks a lot, but I guess that happened. But they did an encore of a rockin' version of One More Saturday Night, and that ends the Grateful Dead's entire history in the state of Montana, with a great show, really a classic show, something I encourage you to get over to get at dead.net. And the reason I'm encouraging you, as we know, all the Dave's Picks do sell out, they're limited. This year actually we went up by 1,000, from 13,000 to 14,000. Because people seem interested in them. Subscriptions did very well this year. Well, I won't say better than we expected. We had high hopes. But they did very well, which means that every subscription we sell is less units to put on sale when they go on sale, which they are right now, which is to say this will probably go within days. So if you're interested in getting this, highly recommend it. A few little housekeeping notes. I want to thank Tony Millionaire, our new artist on these, great artist. Again, another unique take on art for the cover of Grateful Dead albums. Welcome to the party, buddy. And I want to thank Nick Merriweather, who really dug through the archives at UC Santa Cruz, came up with some really, really terrific some clippings, yes, but he also came up with some archival documents, stuff that we've really started using in our releases gig contracts, which are cool to see, letters between the band and promoters and stuff, good stuff. And of course, Richie Peckner and John Conroy, photographers, great stuff, and the whole team at Rhino. This is a really good one. This is one that, again, it should have been, well, I don't know if it should have been. I'm very happy with what Volume 1 and 2 were, but it was given a lot of consideration to be Volume 1. So check it out. It's at dead.net now. We're going to run a special on Sirius this week, so you can check out some of the music on Sirius XM. You can check their schedule. I'm sure they have it on the internet or something. And we're going to play you Weather Report Suite, I think, on DeadNet. But do check it out. It's on sale now. It's going to sell out fast. Get it. And also, Volume 10, like I said earlier, we just locked that one in, and it's a really good one too. So keep an eye on this, I think in April or something. We're going to put it on sale probably sometime in April. So check that out. So thanks for listening. I hope your winter's going well. It's going well here. It's a little cool, as you can see. I got my mitts on. Not crazy cold. The birds are happy. They're all crushing oysters, which I actually just found out the way oyster catchers break open oyster and clam shells is they wedge them between two rocks, and then they just start bashing on them with those big, I don't know if you can see those big orange beaks, and then they crack them open, which is pretty hard, you know. Clam shells and oyster shells and mussels, they're pretty hard shells, and so that's what they do. They catch oysters. Smart little guys. So thanks a lot for listening and watching. Hope I didn't waste too much of your time. See ya.